Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Scott Wurzbacher, and today we're exploring the powerful connection between recreation and conservation. Our guest is Rue McKenrick, a visionary in the outdoor world and the force behind the American Perimeter Trail, a 14,000-mile route that circumnavigates the continental United States. This trail weaves together existing paths, cross-country segments, roads, and even some undefined wilderness routes. Recognized by National Geographic as the ultimate hiking challenge, the APT isn't just about adventure, it's about purpose. The mission is to establish a protected corridor of land and natural resources while connecting communities and making outdoor recreation more accessible across the country. Rue is a professional backpacker, conservationist, and the executive director of the American Perimeter Trail Conference. He spent 3 years walking the perimeter of the United States to scout the path that would become the APT, a journey that now spans over 14,000 miles. And today, he's here to share the story and the bold vision behind this extraordinary project. Rue, welcome to the campfire.
Thank you for having me.
Man, I am so excited. I mean, this is like big thinking. This is the kind of thing I just can't get my head around. And I love talking with people like you that have this capacity to think on just such a massive level. And so I think for the context of listeners, if we could just dive right in, can you talk to us about what the American Perimeter Trail is?
Sure. So starting from the beginning, it's a concept that I came up with. I had a lot of other backpacking experiences in my life and had worked for different nonprofits and conservation and environmental organizations. And so I wanted to do something bigger than myself, be a part of something bigger than myself in the world. And I, in the past, it's like I've offered my talents or my strengths for kind of my personal mission in life. And conservation and backpacking is something that I had a lot of experience with.
Yeah.
And so these two pieces came together and felt like how I could be a part of something. And I essentially came up with the concept, but not the routes. When I started hiking from Bend, Oregon, my home, I didn't have a route picked out. I just had a rough idea of what I wanted to do. And so that means that a lot of it I figured out as I went along.
Yeah.
And essentially, it is a recreational trail that we want to put directly in the middle of a conservation corridor. So for me, it's like I'm kind of like the conservationist first and the backpacker second. So my idea was to create this large corridor of land that could be protected. And then the way that I felt was going to be the most successful way of doing that is having it available for people to recreate in that corridor, therefore giving them some buy-in and making it theirs, making it theirs. So it goes through over 32 states, and on our app, we're showing 15,000 miles right now, but that's with a lot of alternates as well. And the American Perimeter Trail Conference is the 501c3 nonprofit that is the steward of the American Perimeter Trail, and we're also responsible for all things APT, including construction.
You mentioned an app. Is this an app that people can publicly go to now?
Yeah, it's free.
Yeah.
So,
tell me, how do people find that app?
So what you'll do is you'll go to hiker.com,
Okay.
and that's hiker with 2 I's.
Okay.
Hiiker.
Okay.
And if you go there, there were several app companies that got in touch with me that wanted to do it. They just couldn't quite get their head wrapped around how to do it.
Okay.
Because a 14,000 or 15,000 mile hiking app has never been created before. This is the first. And so what we did is we broke it up into sections. So you can just go through, and like I said, it's free for you. And you put an American Perimeter Trail, and then the sections that you're interested in viewing or seeing, there's 12 of them. And you can also get those off of our website too, and it'll link you out to those. And then it'll give you all sorts of information like, well, obviously the maps, places like water, restaurants, post offices, camping. Also, our developer is in Ireland, so they put in pubs
Nice.
as well. Um, and it is the kind of app where you can put your phone in airplane mode and just use the satellite, and it'll follow you. It'll tell you exactly where you're at on planet Earth
Yeah.
on your app. So
Yeah, I love it.
I didn't have that when I hiked it, and
No.
obviously, like I said, I was making it up as I went along a lot of it. So it's like there wasn't anything. I haven't actually like I didn't get to use the app when I hiked it because it didn't
Of course.
exist.
Right. So this concept of, I mean, this is such a massive thing. I mean, you said you've got over 15,000 miles now. It circumnavigates the US. And I think about, trails like that are like Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest Trail, like the American Perimeter Trail. Like, it's crazy to think that, such a massive thing just comes, it sparks from the idea of one person's mind, and you are that person for this trail. What is the sort of the status of the trail today? And like, what is sort of the evolution of, and I'm going to say the manifestation of this trail? Like, how did it go from being an idea to like being a real thing? And in terms of like the actual manifestation and existence of the trail, where is it today, and what's still left?
Great. I'm going to compare us a little bit to some historical things that have happened
Cool.
in the past, since you bring
Yeah.
up the
Great.
Appalachian Trail and that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So I'll address it from that direction.
Cool.
The Long Trail in Vermont. I was fortunate enough to hike that years ago.
Yeah.
And that was created by James Taylor, not that James Taylor,
Okay.
another James Taylor.
Yeah.
And he was on top of a mountain, Stratton Mountain in Vermont.
Yep.
And he was up there doing some hiking. There was no trail, so you just had to go through the woods. If you're climbing up Mound Peak, you just kind of go up until there's no more up.
Yeah.
And often, like, people would climb trees when they got on top because they wouldn't have views. So he's like up in a tree, and he comes up with the idea for the Long Trail. And then many years later, a guy by the name of Benton Mackay is on the same mountain and comes up with the idea for the Appalachian Trail.
Wow.
And so both of those situations of two of our oldest trails in this country were just guys in a tree. And for me, it wasn't much different. I was on a ski lift, So, and my mind, I was by myself. My mind was just kind of wandering. And I thought to myself, like, it would really be great to be involved in conservation or preservation project on my own. And I knew about my love for backpacking. And I thought, well, you could just go around the entire country. And why not? And then at the same time, I thought, well, maybe I'll just go do it. And then I can document it as I go, and I can start the nonprofit to actually build it. So really, it just starts from a thought. There wasn't anything necessarily going on in my life at that time, like a specific experience that led me to this. I had created trails in other places before. And so I knew it was something I wanted to do more of. But honestly, like before this, probably the longest trail that I had worked on and developed was maybe like 10 miles.
Wow.
So this was and I had like permissions from the landowner. This was obviously a much different kind of project, but it really just goes from a thought. And then I tried to avoid doing the American Perimeter Trail for years and years. I just avoided it at every turn because I knew it was going to ruin my life. And but fear, that's a long time to be away. It's a long time to be alone. It's a large investment out of someone's life with no guarantees whatsoever of anything. And so I tried to put it off for like almost 10 years, and then I just couldn't anymore. And I sometimes wish I would have done it when I thought of it, but that was not the way it was supposed to work out. And so I didn't spend those 10 years trying to figure out how to make it happen or how to do it. I would contact people every once in a while, and they would tell me it was a horrible idea, and that and whatever trail they were involved with, that I should just go hike their trail and skip this craziness. People were very worried about the Southwest section of it. And they had good reason to be. And so really it's just a thought. I decide I'm going to do it. I don't have the gear. I don't have the resources. I have $400 in my pocket. I stopped working so I could train. So it was like months without a paycheck. And it finally comes time to go. And my gear, I think at that point, like if you added it up, it was something like 130 years old, because my backpack was 20 years old. Like I had all this stuff left over from backpacking the Triple Crown and multiple other trails years prior to this.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't have any sponsors. I didn't like being on social media, so I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be public, but I wanted everyone to come in. And I, at some point I realized like no one's coming in if you don't put yourself out there and talk about this.
Right.
So then I started doing that, and I formed the project and filed for nonprofit status, came up with a board of directors, got some wonderful volunteers, and that helped me during this time. And the community and the people started forming, and then it was able to be funded. And then some sponsors came in. And really, so what I think my message here is, it took me years to decide, but what I kept on coming up against was like I didn't have an excuse. And when it came time, I knew I didn't have the money, and I knew I didn't have the sponsors. Like I knew this wasn't right. And I had like a friend who was helping me at the time, and they were just like, this kind of thing, like if you build it, they will come, from like Field of Dreams.
Right.
She would like, just go. I'm like, I won't even make it out of California, leaving from Oregon, I'll be lucky if I make it out of Oregon. And they were just like, just go. Everyone, they're coming. Everyone's coming to join this, but you have to like go out and deal with the hardship for a while until like kind of like reinforcements come in, which didn't really happen until several thousand miles into the trip, until I started to get some backup and some support in the front country, and gear support and some financial support. So I just held on until that stuff happened. But what it, at the end of the day, what it turns out is like, I didn't really have an excuse, but I was looking for them probably before I left, just a little bit. I mean, I was really excited to go, but I was also like, this is the wrong time. And I'm lucky I didn't balk and that I moved, because we were right on the verge of a global pandemic.
Right.
And if that would have happened before I left, I don't think I would have left. I don't think it would have ever happened. We wouldn't be talking today. So
yeah, it's wild. And I think about like you and I talked before today, and it resonated with me when you talked about how this idea just kept coming up, and you kept like pushing it away, that it just kept coming back. And I wonder if do you remember like when you finally said like, okay, I'm doing this? Do you remember like moments when you finally said, I'm doing this?
I would get really excited about it like once a year. Like once a year, I'd be like, it's on. And I'd start contacting people and getting information. And then it's like life would just run me over. I don't want to put it that way, but life happens, right? So life happens, and it just kind of delayed things. I think like the final straw was I was working a job, not a career.
Sure.
And I had tried to avoid that most of my life. It's not, we all can't do that. We've got to like pay bills, like we've got to do things. But I was very like purpose driven in my life. So my work was always very closely connected to my personal uh, goals and my personal mission. I have never got married. I've never been married and I don't have children. And so I'm still kind of like free to make some pretty big decisions with my life that didn't affect other people.
Right.
And I remember there were probably two things that happened. I contacted someone who is very knowledgeable in this area, and it's absolutely an expert. And I won't tell you who it is, but it doesn't matter. The point is, they've done an amazing trail project over the course of the last many decades. And I contacted them a couple times when we talked, and this last time we talked, and they were like, just no, it's a horrible idea. Come hike my trail. The Southwest is going to kill you, all this stuff. And so I think I got a little bit of bump like,
Yeah.
Wait, I don't do well with naysayers. I just don't have space for them
Yeah.
in my mind a lot. I'm the biggest naysayer of myself. So I have trouble with that. But other people, I'm like, it's not, don't tell me what I can't do. It's like, let's discuss what our limiting beliefs and limiting psychological factors here that are making us think that we can't do something like this when there's no evidence that we can't. So
was that almost like fuel? Was it fuel for you to hear that? Like somebody saying that that's not a good idea. Was that almost fuel to say, oh, yeah, I can, watch me?
I mean, I think the first time he said it a couple years prior, I was like, maybe he's right. And then I was like, man, you've backpacked like all over this country. Like, just see what happens. There's no guarantee of any of it. And then the other thing is like, I was off work for like a week or two. I had a bike accident because I had been bike commuting for like 15 years.
Okay.
I still don't own a car. I haven't had a car since I was in my 20s. And so that means like bike commuting all through the winter, which means being on ice and snow where I live in Oregon. Like my yard's still under snow right now. So I had a quick like bike accident. I broke my helmet. I got a TBI, had to go to the hospital, had like a week off work. And I think with just like getting knocked out, having the traumatic brain injury and having like that moment in time where I was just like, this is not working for me. All of this is not working. And life is so precious and dear, but short.
Yeah.
And I was like, you need to either like get busy following your dreams or get busy dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Both of them are possible. Well,
Right.
one's a definite and the other one's possible. So, I just took responsibility for my thoughts and my dreams and didn't worry about limiting beliefs. And then like a lot of people who told me that I couldn't do it weren't trying to push mud in my face or they weren't trying to make me feel bad. They were just frightened.
Sure.
With good reason. They were afraid what could happen doing something like that. So
good intentions to the desire to keep you safe, but
that's right. I mean, so what happens is like, and then you just have people out there, if you spend time in like social media or like any kind of these platforms where people are giving their opinions, they're not qualified opinions. They're just some random dude on their couch at home typing stuff, that doesn't know anything. So you have to be like careful when it's good to listen to people and I seek out advice all the time. But there's other things that you have to just understand. Like if you're asking yourself something like, why would they say something like that? And you don't know them, like it's probably because they're being a jerk. And you wouldn't do that to someone, but so some people just wanted me to be safe. Some people are just like, it's fun just to tell people if they can't do things. I don't know. Yeah. So,
but you pressed forward, and that's the important thing. Like you set out and you did this. And so what I'm kind of gathering as I'm talking with you is sort of like the big piece of taking this idea and turning it into a reality was, in fact, you getting out there and doing this 14,000 mile trip on your own and documenting it along the way. Is that fair? Is that?
I mean, I think that there's many different ways of going about this, and
Yeah.
we've talked about this. Like, I mean, there are people who are like famous on social media and like famous for their hiking and backpacking that haven't ever spent a night out,
Yeah.
like haven't really. It's just like a facade.
Sure.
Or people that like raise a lot of money and want to do like a project, but don't necessarily have the ability to follow through with that. And so then, because we have, the cool thing is that the work with the American Perimeter Trail has inspired other people to go out and try to do something similar,
Yeah.
maybe more local to their state,
Yeah.
but something like similar to this. And so they contact me, how can I do this? And, there was one gentleman, I loved the project. He had like a big following. He had a lot of people involved, and he wanted to do it the way I was doing. Like, you actually do it yourself
Yep.
and collect information. And, he was the first night he called his wife and was like, I can't do that, set up his tent, got in his tent and was like, I'm not going to be out here for weeks or months. No, like, no. He called his wife and she came and picked him up. So, who knows? Who knows? So,
but you had the experience. I mean, you're Triple Crown backpacker. I mean, you had the experience. Like, if anybody could do this, this was in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had some confidence because of when I did the Triple Crown. So I think the fact that I had a lot of like old school backcountry skills, gave me some confidence. Also, like my ability to navigate and just be like, and like, I just use maps. I use paper maps the whole APT.
Yeah.
So that is the way that I did that, and that's the way that I hiked the Triple Crown. I had times of loneliness in my life, but I don't want to say loneliness. Let's say times of being alone in my life. Pretty extended periods of time of being alone, but nothing like this. And there was nothing to do to prepare for that. I mean, I trained and I meditated a lot before I left. Every single day, all day long for a couple months before I left.
Yeah.
And that was the only kind of like preparation for some of that. So, I mean, I could have just got bored or like lonely and called it at any point in time. I'm just, I'm grateful for the experience that I had, and I'm glad that it was able to inform the project and save my life a couple times out there too. So
yeah. Hey, so I wonder, this is probably a much bigger conversation because 14,000 miles is a long way, but I wonder if you could sort of in a compressed format, like walk us through, you said it goes through 32 states, it goes around the perimeter, but could you kind of give us some highlights of the route itself?
Yeah. And I'm going to go fast.
Yeah, please.
Otherwise it'll be a while. So I started in Oregon. I stayed mostly in the mountains heading south. On our interactive map on our website, what you'll see is a coastal route in Oregon and also an inland route, and they parallel each other. The reason for that being is because we haven't decided fully if we're going to leave the alternates in or just leave one designated. We're letting things fall where they may. So cool. On our interactive map, and if you look on the app and such, you're going to see like, oh, why does it branch off and then come back together back here somewhere? And it's kind of informed by different things I found out. So I went through Southern California. Honestly, I should have just cut across to Arizona at that time, but I didn't. I turned around and went back up north and cut across to Nevada through Death Valley. That's no longer part of the route. So we nixed that. I went back and figured out the Arizona route. So if you look at Arizona, there's going to be like the southern route that goes near the border, and there's also a route that goes north up to the Grand Canyon and then heads south and reconnects with the other route. So you can go either way. The Death Valley thing I just nixed. It was way too dangerous.
Wow. Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
I made it, but I made it because I got lucky with a couple of things, honestly. So bad idea. So I went back and rescouted Southern California and Arizona and then added those changes. Then it heads over to, from there we go to New Mexico. And of course, New Mexico for me was a lot of just route finding, just like no trail, just walking through the desert. And you cross the Continental Divide at that point.
Okay.
Head over into Texas and, West Texas. And Texas is like more dynamic than I realized. It's actually broken up into these different regions. And so it was kind of interesting to see all of that. Some places I'm really excited about are like Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, because they don't have long state trails,
Yeah.
but we're working on it, because if you live in Oregon like I do, we have the Pacific Crest Trail, but we also have the Oregon Desert Trail. We have a lot of long trails and routes that you can come up with, but there are states out there that just really don't have anything. And some of that challenge is like they don't have a lot of public land either. So it's kind of a fun challenge.
And just
From
to pause right there, because that's part of your mission is to create accessibility for some of these communities that didn't otherwise have that. Yes.
That's right. So, sometimes it's almost critical where people will be like, well, why aren't you just using all of the Pacific Crest Trail, all of the Appalachian Trail, all of this trail? And the reason for that, why we're not doing that. And I didn't step on the Appalachian Trail during my hike. I know most people think I came up the Appalachians on it, but I didn't. Um, the reason that we're just not sharing footbed and trying to just connect these trails is because we want to bring something new to the table.
Yeah.
Because I have a belief that when it's gone, it's gone. And I mean, in my short lifetime, I have seen so many places uh, disappear. And they didn't disappear, they just got covered in concrete and pavement and buildings,
Yeah.
And so it's a lot easier to try to catch it on the front end instead of trying to go back and reclaim something after the fact,
For sure. Yeah.
where it's already been spoken for
Yep.
almost. So this is my way of like speaking for not just me, but for all of us to speak for these pieces of land and say, no, 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 there's plenty of land out here. Okay. But this piece here is going to be just for this because our people need this, our country needs this. So to be like a full holistic, vital society, recreation, nature is a part of that as
Yeah.
well. So,
Yeah.
um, so there's challenges there, but then it heads over to the southeast,
Mhm.
through Florida, and then up the East Coast. We put two routes again on the East Coast that are similar to the West Coast, where there is a coastal route and then there's an interior route, and they parallel each other up the eastern seaboard. Again, I don't. It even weaves. There's even connectors between them, so it may do some zigzag stuff on both coasts where it hits the coast, but then the coast is like too developed. So we like go inland to see something else beautiful.
Yeah.
And so it heads right up through the eastern states into New England. And then from there, I just basically was very close to the Canadian border going across the country. I went up into Michigan and into the Upper Peninsula. I used a bunch of the North Country National Scenic Trail for that route. Not all
Cool.
of it, but some of it I did. And then the North Country Trail actually stops just in the middle of North Dakota. There's a terminus, and it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and that's where it stops. But I wanted to connect over to the Pacific Northwest Trail in
Mhm.
Glacier National Park, Montana.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so that's what I did. So I made a route that it's a Lewis and Clark route. I mean, it follows the Missouri. It follows their historic route. So you just kind of walk in the footsteps of Lewis and Clark. And I think that area in eastern Montana will be really great for cyclists as well. And also people who want to, instead of hike that, if they want to paddle, they can paddle most of that whole section because they're just following the Missouri.
Yeah.
If they want to. Then it heads over to, again, it stays up like close to Canada at times. I wasn't sure if I was in Canada or not. And then over to Washington State. And we're working on some stuff in Washington, but it basically came back to Oregon then at that point.
Yeah.
But there is no terminus, like Bend, Oregon's kind of the center.
Yep.
That's where the organization is. That's where I am. That's where I started. That's where I finished. But it's
a loop. You can start
It's a
anywhere.
loop.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm curious, like, especially on the East Coast, because it's what I'm familiar with. I grew up on the East Coast, grew up in the New England area. Now I'm in North Carolina. But, I know how populated that East Coast is. So I'm kind of curious, like, how does the trail go through, like, any urban areas? Does it go through, or is it, like, can you talk about that?
Yeah, as far as like the Southeast, I have two routes, one that goes into New Orleans and one that goes around it.
Mhm.
Okay. And we've published both of them, but so that would be an area where you would like have an option to either stay more wild or stay more urban.
Yeah.
The thing that I like about the urban part of it is just serving other communities. It may not be a backcountry experience, but people live there. I mean, I have trails out my back door that I use all the time. And I wish that people everywhere had that. And we just all can't.
Yeah.
But I coming back to that societal piece, I think it's better for us as a people to have that. As far as the East Coast goes, I was, I had been alone for a long time. I'd only camped with someone in California, a photojournalist, for a short period of time. And then after I left California, I didn't see another backpacker until I went the whole way around. It was like a year or so later in Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula, until I saw another backpacker. Wow. So coming up like the Appalachian Trail, I was like a little excited to hop on the Appalachian Trail for like a week or two, just to like,
just see it. Yeah.
I see if I'm crazy, like talk with people, like see the same person 2 days in a row or something. And so it was like, I knew it wasn't going to really be beneficial for like the long-term APT project. And especially because I have so many miles on the Appalachian Trail that I already hiked all this stuff. So, so I thought I might hop on for a week or two just to like, not be talking to myself for another year. And then I got there and the pandemic hit and the Appalachian Trail Conservancy asked all distance backpackers to get off the trail. Wow. And so I never got on the Appalachian Trail, but I don't think I would have. Maybe it would have just been for loneliness. And then the other thing was like, I was doing this professionally as opposed to just doing it recreationally. Yeah, so I didn't have like a choice really to be like, well, I don't like what they're asking and it's a trail and anyone can go out there. I would have lost all of my funding and support if I had started going up the Appalachian Trail because I was asked not to. Yeah. So I made my own route up through the Appalachians and I didn't see any backpackers. So you can still have a totally isolated solo experience on the East Coast, but you have to go find it.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Rue, I have so many questions for you and so many different like diverse areas. Like the one that you've used the word loneliness a bunch of times on this call, and it's, you're out there by yourself. I'm just curious, like, what do you think about? Like you mentioned like doing a lot of meditation before you got into this. I mean, obviously you knew it was going to be lonely out there and you kind of prepared yourself, but what is it like to be out there on your own for such a long period of time? And what kinds of things happen in your mind?
It's very difficult to describe. It's I'll do my best here. I didn't know I was going to be alone that much. I mean, I knew some, but honestly, like because of the pandemic and some other things that were going on in the world, I couldn't replicate this again if I wanted to. Like if I was like, I don't want to see a backpacker, for a year and a half or another hiker, I don't think I could do that again now if I tried. That was just like there was the timing.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to not conflate the two things, loneliness and being alone,
Yeah.
because they're not the two things.
Right.
They're not the same thing.
Right.
Um, and so I think that it's all very relative, that experience. There were a lot of people that talked to me about the pandemic and how isolated they felt during that time. And so for them, that was like very much a time of isolation, as it was for me. And I don't know that it felt any different for me than it did with them. But I talked to the birds a lot. I did, you know, every lunch.
I love
And
that.
so I got good at making bird calls. And I thought about the APT a lot because there was always so many moving pieces because we never really had all the resources that I needed. So that was constant, like never had all the money or like
Yeah.
always trying to figure out like, what can we do next to keep funding this thing? So I think about that stuff a lot. I would write songs. I wrote a lot of songs, sing songs all day.
That's great.
But it was just more like me entertaining myself,
Yeah.
than anything else. But I think that what happens is if you spend too much time alone and in isolation, you will become symptomatic. And I read about it, but when I was going into like the pandemic, and I knew what happened to people like being stuck on islands, and I knew what happened to people like in solitary confinement and prisons. And it's always the same kind of conditions that people start to exhibit, or symptoms rather. And so I thought like knowing some of that would help me
Yeah.
with that. But at the end of the day, you're just human. And so if you do that to a human being, there's going to be a repercussion. And some of it might be great. Like maybe you'll learn something new about yourself, or maybe you'll feel inspired because you were able to do this alone for so long. Um, or maybe you will have like anxiety and depression as well with it, which is it's a normal consequence of just
Yeah.
not just being wild like that.
So
We're
what
not meant to be wild on our own like that, so
did you experience any of those things that you just talked about?
all of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
all of it. And so I just tried to be kind to myself as much as I could
Yeah.
and realize. So what happened is like the pandemic, by the time I got to Michigan, some things opened up a little bit. And there was a backpacker in Michigan who I didn't know, who started like contacting everyone in Michigan along the like way I was going and saying like, can you help this guy out? And I think like under normal contexts, that kind of trail angel is like, maybe we think of, oh, we get a hot meal, or maybe we get to sleep in a bed or like take a shower with these strangers. But honestly, for me, it was like I just wanted to spend like a day around someone
With a person. Yeah.
and then like see them again the next morning,
Yeah.
maybe like see a person 2 days in a row.
Yeah.
Because when you don't, so like I often see myself a lot in other people, like I see myself as a reflection in other people.
Yeah.
Um, and when you don't have that for long, extended periods of time, you start to get insecure,
Yeah. That's
and
why.
you start feeling like, am I strange? Like, am I a weird dude now? Because no one's telling you like, yeah, you're acting strange, or or no, you're fine. You're
Yeah.
doing fine. So you just are like, since you don't have this reflection back,
Right. It's
that,
wild. Yeah.
yeah, it's like it's very difficult to describe. I don't recommend it for long periods of time.
Yeah.
I do recommend it for self growth, though. I
Yeah.
think it's a good idea, but maybe not a couple years.
Yeah.
So,
Man, I appreciate that insight. I do want to pivot because one of the conversations you and I had, I want to make sure that we talk about because I'm so excited about it. You have a lot of backpacking experience, but
mhm.
you're a conservationist. And what you've talked about is how this project brings that recreation and conservation together. But I wonder if we can talk a little bit about, because when you and I talked the first time, we sort of differentiated a little bit between like what it means to be an environmentalist and a conservationist, and then sort of wrapping that all into like your mission for the project. So I know that was probably just a big, a big wraparound explanation for all of this, but like, could you talk a little bit about your ultimate vision from a conservation standpoint for this project? And then maybe we can get into a little bit about what that means as it relates to recreation and environmentalism.
Sure. Sure. I'll give an example,
Yeah.
and then maybe just start here with a little bit of definition. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, uh, the way that I'm looking at it is, we want to bring preservation to an area, to a corridor, so it will be under certain limitations or protections. Um, but it's not a purist mentality. We still are using that area for recreation. And if there's pre-existing stuff there that's using resources, um, the idea is not to say, well, we can't use any resources on this planet because we need them. And that's more like conservation. In other words, like creating preservation, but also utilizing natural resources at the same time. Environmentalism can be a little bit more purist, where it's like, well, don't touch this at all. And so we have, if we look at the Forest Service, we have designations like, for instance, we have national forest, where they have to harvest a certain percentage of that forest every year. That's their mandate. They can get caught up in court. They can get sued if they're not creating, if they don't have enough timber projects going on. Okay. They also use that, the Forest Service was just their Department of Agriculture, right? They're under the Department of Agriculture because the agriculture is the trees. Okay. And that's why they're there and exist. And in modern contemporary times, they've brought in this whole recreation element to it. And now it's some of our biggest recreation areas. And they make that possible for people by creating access or trailheads or what have you. And an environmentalist would be more like, the Forest Service has forest, and then it has wilderness. And wilderness, you can put trails through, but you can't use any motorized vehicles in there. You can't even use a chainsaw in there. You have to use a old ripsaw. And that is more like, we're not going to touch anything. Like, even if a fire comes through here, we're not going to fight the fire. We're just going to let it do its natural course. And so, I was contacted. I was looking at this piece of land, actually in the Carolinas. So bring that up since I'm talking to you. And there's this big forested area, and I was trying to get the trail to go through there. And I was told that there had already been a group that had been through this with landowners and land management before, and there were like some really rich neighborhoods around there, and the people, I wasn't there, but supposedly like the people in the neighborhoods didn't want people, I don't know, they didn't want people hiking around that area. Like, they were happy with the way it was.
Yeah.
So I got a message, or I got a letter from someone stating like, how dare you try to put a trail through there? You're going to disrupt the animals. Like, if you put a single track walking trail, you don't care about the environment. You don't care about the animals. You should just leave it alone. Well, I'm here to tell you right now, this piece of land that I'm talking about, there was probably, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I mean, I would say 100,000 trees on it. I'm just throwing out a number. It's a lot, right? Just tree on top of tree, a forest. There you go.
Right.
And it's all gone. It's all completely gone. It's completely leveled everything. Okay. So the way that I address that is someone saying to me, well, you can't touch anything. You shouldn't touch or use this land in any way. It should be preserved fully. And my answer is, but that's what happens to this land when we don't find a human element to contribute and also participate with. So either you get the entire forest wiped out, it's never going to come back. They're going to build all of that. Or you can put a single trail through there, and use the land for human beings so that they care about it and they try to protect it and keep it there. So
That makes sense.
the environmentalism is a little bit more purist,
Yes,
kind of
I
like
understand.
leave things alone, and conservation is a little bit more of like it's just looking at the atmosphere and the situation we are, and we're doing the best. It's not the ideal, but is like the best that
Yeah.
we can do with this area. So
And so this might be a stupid question, but like, why is recreation that best use?
it's the best use for a person like me that has a recreation, backpacking, conservation, environmental background. It's a question of value.
Mhm.
And so we can look at value in two different ways. We can look at value as a price tag, or we can look at value as like our personal values. Like,
Mhm.
what do we value in life? So in order to like, if I was able to say, get the deed to the entire American perimeter corridor, and I wanted to put a dollar value on it, there's a lot of things I could use that land for
Right.
that would be much higher value than recreation, right? But wanting to maintain the character of the land and the reason that people want to be there in the first place, which is just to be out in nature, that aligns with this other value, which doesn't have the price tag attached to it
Yeah.
uh, for anyone involved.
Well,
But it has this intrinsic value
yeah.
that is made from the earth and from nature, and not something that we can create. And when we destroy it, it takes a long time for it to be
And
recreated.
it seems like this is part of your vision in that like recreation is like the least impact on, like, you've got to use the land for something is the sort of the assumption. We can't just not touch it because ultimately it's going to get wiped out. But if we can use it for recreation, the impact is less than, some other type of development. So it essentially allows you to achieve your mission of conserving,
Yes.
protecting the land, but doing it in such a way that it's making use of the property so that it's not used for some other purpose. And essentially, it's a way of protecting the land, but doing it sustainably. Is that fair?
That's more than fair. So I appreciate you summarizing that. Also, the other thing is with the dollar symbol value, that V that we're talking about, there are places like Mississippi and Louisiana that don't have this recreational development,
Yeah.
and there are people there and parties involved that want to do this because of an economic incentive to depressed communities. So there is the intrinsic value, and then certain places in the country, they're saying, hey, nobody ever comes here. We don't have any services because no one comes for them, and it's a depressed
Yeah.
area. And so they're looking at it like, yes, yeah, we definitely want the trail here. We want people coming here so they can buy our gas and eat at our restaurants. I live in a town that was a timber town, a huge timber town, and there's no more mills open. So now it's a tourist town, and it relies heavily on its recreation. And so, you know, things are always changing and evolving, but I feel like this is the best opportunity that we have. Even there's places in the Appalachians where 120 years ago there wasn't a tree standing on some of those mountains, you
Yeah.
know, and some of those same places are now under a protected corridor as part of the Appalachian Trail Conservancy.
Yeah.
So it does come back. It can come back over time, but it takes a lot of time, and then there has to be protections, and the recreation point takes just a piece of land where someone's not thinking about, it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and turns it into like a national jewel,
Yeah.
like the Appalachian Trail. So it'll always be there for
Love,
everyone from here on out.
love it. Rue, you wanted to create something that's bigger than you. You've certainly done that. I'm just curious, like, beyond your years, I don't know
Yeah,
whether that's, 50 or 100 and 200 years from now, like
I hope not.
what would be your vision for the APT after you? are no longer here?
I think what's going to happen is we'll be exploring designation. So there are many different designations throughout the country. Um, the ones that we're probably the most familiar with is National Scenic Trail.
Okay.
So that would be the Triple Crown. Those are National Scenic Trails.
Yeah.
There's also National Recreational Trails. That would be like something like the Pinhoti Trail in Alabama and Georgia. So there's these different designations. So I'm hoping beyond me
Yeah.
that there is a designation, and I'm not naming the specific designation because I believe that we need to revisit the National Trails Act of 1968, and it was amended in 1978. So it hasn't been visited since 1978, and I think we need to revisit it, which means the American Perimeter Trail could possibly fit into a designation that doesn't currently exist. Because
Gotcha.
it's its own thing. I mean, it's
Yeah.
its own animal. Like, it's hard to compare it to other things, to other trails. So what I would see happening is that it enters into a formal designation, and then also I would ideally have an office in every state, but let's at least say every region has satellite offices and clubs that
That's
are
awesome.
responsible for their different section and
Yeah.
region. So I think that's more of like the long term as far as development of the trail. I don't know what the backpackers will do with it, or hikers, or that'll be
Well,
fun. But
you and the APT have been recognized by National Geographic. What was that like for you?
oh, it's cool. I every time I do anything like us speaking today, the full intention is that people will either become members or contribute to the nonprofit or check out our store or offer to volunteer. And so, like, often when I get out there and I talk about things, it helps us as an organization. So
Yeah.
National Geographic was a cool one because I was in National Geographic in November and December as
Cool.
well. So there were two different articles, and I think, like, I gave some information in it. I hope that helped people out. We gave different sections. We highlighted like different sections of the trail that people might want to go do as a trip. And I worked with different authors, but the one article was like a very quick conversation, and the other article was like months of like interviews
Yeah.
with me that they just like
It was great.
squeezed it into this thing. But I mean, that was I don't know how long I interviewed for that. 40 hours? I don't know. It was a lot of, they weren't sure where they were going with it. So they started from like the time I was born, and like they like got the skinny on me like completely. And that wasn't even what we were supposed to really be doing in the article, because I wanted it to be about the trail. See,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, I do these interviews and I always wanted to be about the trail and the work and the organization. But then people want to know about like me personally. And I'm like, okay.
They're
All
so
right, I'll tell you
intertwined,
some
bro.
things.
They're so intertwined, and it's a good segue to your book. But
Mm.
before we go there, you mentioned like wanting to get people to join and get involved and volunteer. So I want to just stop right there. How can people do that?
Great. You just go to our website, americanperimetertrail.org.
Okay.
And there'll be options there to contribute or membership. We try to make it easy for people by making it cheap as well. It's $35. It's not that cheap. I haven't always had $35, so I understand. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I was on the trail times where I didn't have $35 in my pocket. So $35 annually. And we tried to break that up. Like, I was even trying to give away free memberships, but what we came up with is you can pay $6 every 2 months if you want to. That'll just like automatically come out of your account.
Yeah.
So that's what we're offering there on the website, that you can get that information. And so you can sign up to be a member, or you can just contribute. You can check out our store. That's money just goes into the nonprofit.
I love it. And you've got a book out right now. This is
Yeah.
the first book. It's called The American Perimeter Trail, Volume 1, West, a
Yeah.
14,000-mile journey. Tell us about the book.
So there's 4 books. This is the first one. finishing the second one right now. And so the way that they work out is this is west, the next one is south, the next one is east, and the last one is north. So they follow the route. I have read 1,200 page books before. It's not really like how I like to consume media. I love reading series. It's always like so much fun, especially if you're waiting on like another book to come out. You're like, oh man, this is great. I can't wait for it. So and these are quick reads. And since I like to enjoy it that way, that's the way that I decided to do it, was to break it up in a series of books. And what it's going to talk about, especially in volume 1, it talks mainly about what happened. Like, it's not going to run. It's not a tour guide. Like, I'm not going to give you a rundown of every place that I've been to. I will give you some background and some history and some environmental information. I'm not going to tell you like the entire process of how you create the American Perimeter Trail. That will come out as it happened in real time through the books. So in the first book, the project exists, but the nonprofit did not exist yet. So book 1 is just like, what happened?
Yeah.
And you read it.
I did.
There's a lot of crazy stuff that happened.
It is. It's fun. I mean, it's more memoir than like describing the process of, like you just said, like that's going to come out in future versions. But this is more of like your story. And you talked about like sometimes people want to hear your story. You'd rather talk about the trail, but this book is more your story.
That's right.
Like the first 25% of the trail.
That's right.
And it's daily stuff, like the trials and tribulations, the things that you went through. I mean, there's joy, there's tears, there's danger, there's all kinds of stuff that happens in this first book. It's great.
Oh, thank you for that. It gets pretty intense, and book 2 is worse.
Love it. Well, it's so good. And can people get a copy of that as well on the website, or we need to go to Amazon to get the book?
No, I mean, so the nonprofit's not like, the book isn't funding the nonprofit and stuff, so we don't have it there. Like, I don't know if I will in the future. So go to Amazon and you can find it some other places. But if you Google American Perimeter Trail, you'll find it. So,
Rue, this has been such a fun conversation. I think we could probably talk for another 2 hours. You just have such an epic story. The first book came out. There's 3 more that are going to be coming. But at some point, I know that Hollywood's going to pick up on this whole story. And when they do, I want to know who's going to be the Hollywood actor that's going to play you in the movie about the making of the American Perimeter Trail.
So I get asked this all the time, but I don't, not like in interviews, just people ask me and I just always blow them off. But I guess I actually have to give you an answer today. I mean, okay, there's a couple options. I'm for hire. So that could be one option.
Hey, some people have answered that way. You want to star in your own movie. That works.
I mean, I don't know that I want to, but I guess like this would be my ideal. It's future tense, and it's like this movie isn't made for another 30 years. And it's, if you would have asked me last week, I would have said like Val Kilmer.
Oh, man.
I would have. Like,
rest in peace, man. Awesome. Love that.
Especially like a younger Val Kilmer, because I just so appreciated his work he did with Tombstone. Just excellent job. But these people are older than me. Like, I would think, like, it's the future story. It's me if I make it to my 70s or my 80s. So it's like, Gary Oldman, I would think would be cool.
Oh, good ones. You got this dialed in. I like it. Yeah.
So, because I think those are like the people that would have the depth to kind of have, try to express that experience to people. But, and I think and then I also have other ideas, like maybe it could be like a horror movie. Gary Oldman could be like a Dracula / me.
Wow.
And like we could call it the American Perimeter, like hell.
Ooh.
Instead of trail. So I think a horror movie would be a great idea.
Yikes. Okay. I don't even know if I want to ask you what your movie's going to be called then. You just went there. Gary Oldman, The American Perimeter Hell. Wow. Okay. Love it.
I think that there's some, just with some experiences I had, I don't try to like tell people too much what they should think about
Yeah.
certain experiences I have, like, oh, it taught me this lesson.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that I think,
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I knew America before this. I was wrong.
Mm.
Yeah, I was wrong. So this opened my eyes in all kinds of wonderful and horrific ways, like at the same time, the whole bag, because it's such a dynamic place in which we live. And culturally, it's, the most dynamic on the planet. So, I mean, what a fascinating land we live in. And so
that was kind of a mic drop right there. And it's making me want to read volumes 2, 3, and 4. I can't wait for them to come out.
great.
And Rue, this has been such a fun conversation. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate it. And for those listening, I hope you've been inspired today as much as I have. I hope Rue's story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or just need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thanks for listening. Rue, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, and fair winds.